You're watching members of the Northeast Ripcords as they skydive into the center of the opening ceremonies just before the United States National and World Championship rounds. We're here today in Bodines, Pennsylvania, located in the northeastern part of the state. It's a real nice day for our trials, clear, humid, and the temperature will be in the lower 90s for the rest of the day. This could be the last scheduled U.S. round for several years, as no Canadian World round is scheduled for next year or even the next. This makes it too expensive for the Europeans to come over here for just one round, and that's why just 14 European riders came over for this one. 24 riders started the event, and only 2 did not finish. There were 18 sections, 3 loops, and a 7-hour and 30-minute time limit. The sections today are all rocky, big steps and ledges, tight trick turns, loose shale, and off-camber turns. A good dry event. And a big contrast to the French round several weeks ago, where all the sections were wet and slippery. We'll see how the Europeans can adjust their riding technique to this dry type of terrain. We're in the practice area here, watching Jordi Terrace and Diego Bozes practice up a bit before the event. World round standings at the present show Jordi Terrace first with 89 points, second Steve Saunders with 83, third Thierry Michaud 82, fourth Diego Bozes with 73, fifth Gabino Renales with 64, sixth Pascal Couturier 42, seventh Tony Scarlett with 40, 8th, Louis Galac with 38. 9th, Eddie Lejeune with 38. And 10th, Philippe Borladier with 34.
I ask you to please stand for our national anthem. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our opening ceremonies. Hope you have a good time today. And riders, we wish you success.
First rider in section number 1, Gabino Renales. This section was located about 5 minutes walk up the hill on the loop. Fairly difficult section, taking about 3.4 points per rider. Several areas in this section required a bit of trick turning, bouncing the front wheel and the back wheel. This was the hardest part of the section. A lot of fives were taken right on this rock ledge. Another trick turn area down here to get set up for this big slab rock to the exit. A lot of points were taking on this rock right at the top. And Gabino scored a 1 his first loop, a 2 on his second, and a 1 on his third loop. Brian Young from the USA, who's been riding very good lately. He's presently leading the U.S. National Series. Steve Saunders from England was the only rider to clean the section all 3 times. Donato Miglio had 3 1s on it. And Ryan had scored a 1 on his first loop, a 3 on his second, and a 5 on his third. Jordi Terrace, the next rider from Spain. Diego Bozas had a clean and 2 5s. Pascal Couturier had 2 cleans and a 5. Andrew Codina had 2 5s and a clean. Renato Chiaberto had a clean, a 5, and a 2. Good job on the trick turn there by Jordi. Jordi had a 1 and a 2 on his second and third loops. Tony Scarlett had a 3, a 5, and a 3. Real nice ride from Jordi with a clean. Eddie Lejeune, the next rider. Former 1982, 83, and 84 World's champion. And that was all done on a Honda 4-stroke. The checker just gave him a 5 for rolling back a bit with his foot down. And Eddie had a little debate with the checker there while he was balanced in the section. Eddie broke his thumb right after the Scottish 6 day while he was practicing. And as a result, he missed the last 2 world rounds. And I think it might still be bothering him somewhat. And he did get scored a 5 in this section, and he did not finish the event. Thierry Michaud from France. Thierry did very well in this section. He cleaned his last 2 loops. Like Eddie, he scored a 5 there, although he appeared to be stopped with his foot down. Well, it was a good ride anyway, but Thierry likes to debate these calls if he thinks it was at all close. And he's going back to have a little discussion with the checker. However, he was still awarded the 5. Section 2 was the third easiest section in the trials. Basically, you just drove downhill, made a turn at the bottom, and then back up the hill. 3 Michaud had 3 cleans in this section. Pascal Couturier, a 1 clean and a 1. Donato Miglio, 1 and 2 cleans. Bernie Schreiber, 2 and 2 1s. And the hardest part of the section is right at this point. And Jordy had 3 cleans in this section. Donato Miglio, 2 cleans and a 2. Johnny Anderson had a 5, a clean, and a 1. Ryan Young, 2 cleans and a 1. And Mark Manico, 5, a 3, and a 5. Steve Saunders from England also had 3 cleans. Eddie Lejeune from Belgium, now riding. His brother, Eric Lejeune, was also hurt right after this Guide of 6 day. He tore some ligaments in his left knee, and he's going to be out probably for the rest of the season. But I'm sure he'll be back next year. Eddie gets just a bit too slow here. Gets into some of the loose rock and dirt there. Makes a nice recovery though, and he's scored a 3. Diego Bozes from Italy, now riding. He had a clean and a 1 his last 2 loops. Nice ride with a clean. Bernie Schreiber is about to drop into section number 3, which was the second easiest section in the trials. Basically, this was an off-camber hillside with several turns and an exit out over a ledge. Most of the top riders didn't have any problem with this section. 3 Michaud, Pascal Couturier, Jordy Terrace all clean this section. Bernie had a 1, a 2, and a 1 in his 3 rides. Donato Miglio, a clean and 2 1s. Steve Saunders, a clean, a 3, and a clean. Renato Chiaberto, a 1 and 2 cleans. Andrew Codina, a clean and 1 and a clean. Tony Scarlett on the JCM now riding. He had a clean and a 3 his last 2 loops. And he cleans his first time through the section. Ryan Young had 2 cleans and a 2. Johnny Anderson, 1 clean and a 1. And Mark Manico with 3 1s. Diego Bozes now riding. He had a clean and a 1 his last 2 loops. And he scored a clean. And down the loop a bit to section number 4. The main obstacles in this section were 3 big rocks, like you see Johnny Anderson on now. Johnny's from Sweden, presently living in the USA, and riding the USA Nationals this year. And he had 3 5s on this section. Jordy Terrace from Spain now riding. Thierry Michaud, Diego Bozes, Andrew Codina all clean this section. He's over the second rock and 1 more to go. He's the only rider that could get over this rock pretty much straight ahead, as you see him ride here. Jordy has very good technique for coming up on top of big rocks. And he's the only other rider that cleaned it all 3 loops. Pascal Couturier had a clean 1 and a clean. Renato Chiaberto 1 5 and a 1. Donato Miglio 1 clean and a 1. Most of the other riders were taking a different line on that next rock you see there. Instead of going up that steep face, they were going around to the left and up the other side of it. And Eddie takes a 5 here. Section 5 up there on the hillside. A lot of spectators around these 2 sections. Steve Saunders, the next rider. He's already gotten over the first rock, and that's the second one. As you can see, that side of the rock is just a little bit more angled. It's not quite so straight up and down. Most of the riders just did like this, drive into the corner, make the trick turn, line the bike straight ahead for the rock, and up and over. Steve had a 1 and a clean his last 2 rides. And he scored a clean. And Mark Manico tries the steep side, almost makes it up. He had 3 5s in this section. Jordy Terrace entering section number 5. So we pick him up on our second camera now. This was an exciting section, fairly hard. Hardest part right there, going up that angled ledge. Jordy had a 3 and a 5 his second and third rides. Kind of a trick turn corner there, up another ledge into the exit, and he scored a clean. Steve Saunders now riding. So we try and follow the rider through the section. Steve had a 3 and a 2 his last 2 rides. Steve makes it kind of rough on the video crew. He takes a lot of time when he rides these sections. Some nice trick maneuvering there to get set up for the big ledge. And good slingshot technique there from Steve as he accelerates up those rocks. Steve's going to be scored a 3 on his first ride through. Jack Stites, USA, scored a 5, and he did not finish the event. Renato Chiaberto from Italy. And he had 3 5s in this section. Pascal Couturier from France riding the Merlin. He had a 3 and a 2 his last 2 rides. Nice acceleration there on the rocks. A lot more 5s were taken the last lip because the dirt there in that area just before the big ledge there got real loose. And nobody could get any traction to get up there. Here's a view of what the exit looks like. And he scored a 1. Eddie Lejeune gets up there in pretty good shape. And he scored a 3. Diego Bozes from Italy. Real good slingshot technique there. He had a 1 and a 2 his last 2 loops. And he's going to clean this section. Him and Jordy Terrace had the only 2 cleans. And the last rider, Donato Miglio, with 3 5s. Section 7 and Section 15 were the 2 hardest rideable sections. They each took 4.5 points per rider. Ryan Young from the USA now riding. That ledge was a hard part, but the hardest part's coming up here. A lot of 5s were taken here. Brian had 3 5s in this section. Chip Webb riding a Merlin this year from California. Kip also had 3 5s. Jordy Terrace and Bernie Schreiber talking it over. Jordy had a 3 and a 5 his last 2 loops. 2 ways of getting out of this section. One was to the right, most of the riders been going. Another way was to the left. And plenty of 3rd year speed. Jordy gets out with a 1. Tony Scarlett from England on the JCM. Steve Saunders had 3 5s. Diego Bozes 1 and 2 5s. Tony Scarlett goes on the other side, tries to get up right next to the ribbon and gives a dirt bath to a lot of the spectators. And he just scored a 5. Pascal Couturier, 3 3 and a 2. Renato Chiaberto, a 1 3 and a 5. And Donato Miglio, a 1 and 2 3s. Eddie Lejeune tries the other side. And he gets a 5. World champion Thierry Michaud dropping into the section. That was a tricky downhill. A lot of loose rocks. A few 5s were taken in that area also. And he scored a 3, a 2, and a 2. Andrew Codina from Spain riding the Gas. He had a 5 and a 3 his last 2 rides. Didn't quite make it for a 5. Shields forgot from France, 1981 World's Champion. Had 2 5s his last 2 loops. Scored a 3.
Watch out, he's coming up. I know I'm going to spot him.
Steve Clark from the USA won the sportsman's class in the Nationals last year. From Omaha, Nebraska, and he had 3 5s in this section. Bernie Schreiber now riding section number 9. Bernie had a clean and a 3 last 2 rides. Diego Bozes, Pascal Couturier were the only riders to clean this section all 3 loops. Thierry Michaud had a clean, a 1, and a clean. Steve Saunders 2 cleans and a 1. This was the hardest part of the section, from here up the sledge to the exit. And Bernie scored a 2. Jordy Terrace had a clean, 1 and a clean. And Donato Miglio a 1 and 2 cleans. Luis Galac from Spain, right in the Mecatecno. Luis won the first world round in Spain this year. And he had 2 2s and a 5. Easy O'Regan had a 1 and a 5 his last 2 loops. Scatters the crowd a bit. Scored a 5. Mark Manico from the U.S. now riding the 1985 high school champion in the Nationals. He's from Colorado. He had 2 3s his last 2 loops. And another dirt bath for the spectators. He scored a 3. Kind of tough on cameras. Steve Clark had a 5 and a 3 his last 2 rides. And not quite enough speed. He scored a 5. There were 3 sections in this trials. None of the riders made it through. This one, section 14, and section 16. They all had rock walls that were just a little bit too high for the riders to get up. Steve Saunders is going to try his luck here in section number 10. Real loose dirt there just prior to the wall. It's pretty tough to get a good run at it. I think it would have been makeable had they had a little bit longer a run for it. Jordy Terrace, next rider to try it. Almost gets up. Gets a good hand from the crowd for even attempting it. Most of the riders in the second and third loops just rode through and got a card punched and didn't even attempt the wall. A lot of encouragement by the crowd here as Thierry Michaud tries it. And the last rider to try it, Ryan Young. And Ryan did get the honors of getting the highest up on the wall, however. One of the harder sections here, section 11. Lots of 4-foot ledges in this section. Drop-offs, real tight turns. Tony Scarlett on the JCM had 2 3s his last 2 loops. This is probably the hardest part here, dropping off that rock. Making almost a 180-degree turn and back up through a little crack in between the 2 rocks. Jump across to another rock. Left turn back. Smaller ledge. And a trick turn area here to the right. And he had about a half a bike length to go up about a 3.5-foot ledge to the exit. And Tony scored a 5 his first time through. Jordi Terrace from Spain. It's a real good ride going through here. He had a 2 and a 1 his last 2 loops. Thierry Michaud had 3 3s. Nice job of positioning his bike. Does a real good job on this next part. When he makes this trick turn, though, his back wheel is going to drop right into the tape. Right there. He doesn't know it. Should have been a clean, but they have to give him a 5 for that because he broke the ribbon. Saunders had a 5 and a 3 his last 2 loops. Pascal Couturier, 3 3s. Donato Miglio, 3 5 and a 2. Renato Chiaberto, a 5 and 3 3s. Ryan Young had 2 3s and a 5.
Still moving slowly.
Scores a 3. Diego Bozes now riding. He had a 1 and a 2 his last 2 rides. And he's out with a 3. Izzy O'Regan with 3 5s. This was another one of the hardest rideable sections, taking 4.5 points per rider. Kip Webb from USA going through a difficult part of the section right there. He had 3 5s. Andy Song from Arizona. Also with 3 5s. Ron Como from Vermont. Ron and Ryan Young rode the first 4 world rounds this year to gain a bit of experience. Nice try at 3 5s in this section. Johnny Anderson, former Swedish champion. Was riding a Fanuc last year. Switched over to the factory Honda. A lot of obstructions and obstacles in this section before you got to that ledge right there. A lot of 5s were taken right there. There was really no way to get a good run at it. Johnny had 3 5s. Jordy Terrace is going to give a bit of a riding lesson here. He had a 1 and a 3 as first and third loops. Nice positioning there. And the exit here was probably the next hardest part of the section. And Jordy scores a 1. Nice ride. Steve Saunders from England on the 303 Fanuc. All righty. Steve had a 5 each of his last 2 loops. Not quite enough speed. He takes a 5. And fellow Englishman Tony Scarlett. Also had 2 5s his last 2 loops. Well, they finally get him stopped. He scored a 5. Gobino Renales had a 5 and a 3. His last 2 loops. Scores a 5 his first time through. Jules Bergat with 2 5s his last 2 loops. Has a problem in the same spot. And he scored a 5. Louis Kalak. With 3 5s. Eddie's leaning on the tree a bit. Checker cautions him about it. And he scores a 5. Renato Miglio. With a 5 and a 3 his last 2 loops. Scores a 5 here. Thierry Michaud now riding. Had a 5 and a 3 his last 2 loops. Going to have kind of an interesting ride coming up here. There's a rock he's going to go over here. Right there, it's going to move on him. Throw him off his line for an immediate 5. Thierry is discussing a re-ride with Jerry Young, the trials master, who's standing right next to me, because...
Hey, the section broke. Well, what happened if it rained?
And he was awarded a 5. Diego Bozes, admittedly now riding. Diego had a 2 and a 3 his last 2 rides. Nice maneuvering there. He scores a 2. Sections 13 and 14 were too far away and too difficult to get to, carrying all the video equipment. Only 5 riders recorded cleans in section 13. Diego Bozes, Thierry Michaud, Pascal Couturier, who had 2 of the cleans, Jordi Terrace, and Renato Chiaberto. All the riders 5 section 14. There was a big wall in it, which nobody could get up. Section 15 was another one of the hardest sections, taking 4.5 points per rider. Jordi Terrace had 2 5s and a 3. Pascal Couturier had a 3 and a 5 last 2 loops. That was the hardest part, getting up that ledge. Once you're up here on this flat rock, it's some trick turning here. And as soon as it gets turned here, there's another ledge to go up. Over some smaller rocks, a left turn back down the hill. A turn to the right on this big rock, and Back up the other side to the exit. Fives are taken right here also. And that's where Pascal Fives is, first loop. Gabino Renales slides off the start of the section. Real loose down in that area. He had 3 fives. This whole section was very challenging. He couldn't relax for a minute. It was either loose rocks at the start or ledges. You really had to watch what you were doing when you were riding this section. Tony Scarlett slides down the hill. Tony had 3 fives in this section. Andrew Codina. With 3 fives. Thurry Michaud had the best ride in this section with a 1, a 3, and a 1. And Ron Young gets up the ledge. And 5's the next one. Ron had 3 fives in this section. Skalak with 3 fives. Renato Chiaberto with a 5 and 2 3s. Steve Saunders with a 5 and 2 3s. Eddie Lejeune makes it up to Big Rock. And takes a big 5 on the exit. Diego Bozes had a 5 and a 1 the second and third loops. Donato Meglio had 2 5s and a 3. And Gilles Brigade had 3 5s. Takes a knee dab. And they finally give him a 1. Then we stopped on the loop to take a look out over the beautiful Pennsylvania countryside. On our way over to section 16. Charles Masters closed it after the first loop. Nobody was getting through it anyway. We'll take a quick look at it here. All the riders 5 this section. Just wasn't any way to get enough traction to get the speed up to climb up the wall. Gabino Renales almost makes it. He came about the closest to doing it. The more riders that rode this, the more difficult it became. Section 17 was about like a big bowling ball field on the side of a hill. These rocks are all mossy and they all moved quite a bit when you rode over them. fives are taken in this section. The lower part of it. Mark Manico, first rider we saw before, had 3 5s. Larry Michaud had a 5, a 3, and a 5. Steve Saunders had a 3, a 5, and a 3. Jordy Terrace, 3, 5, and a 3. Pascal Couturier, 2 5s and a 3. Diego Bozes had a 5, 2 3s. Steve Saunders entering section 6 for the second loop. Big off Camber Rock to go over at the start. It's up kind of a double ledge here where a lot of 5s were taken. Steve had 2 5s and a 3 in this section. Johnny Anderson now riding had a 5 and a 3. His first and third loops. Once you're up on that rock, it's down to another flat rock. Do a trick turn. Get set up for the sledge to the exit. A lot of 5s are taken here also. Johnny Anderson 5s this on his second loop. Andrew Codina had a clean on his first loop. Had a 1 on his third. 5's the second loop. Renato Chiaburo had a 2 and a 3 his first and third rides. Larry Michaud had 2 1s and a clean. Jordy Terrace 2 5s and a 1. Diego Bozes had the best ride, a 1, a clean, and a 1. This was the easiest section in the trials, taking 1.1 points per rider. All the top riders cleaned this section, except Donato Miglio had 2 1s and a clean. Gabino Plus clean at 2 and a clean. Louis Galak, 2 1s and a clean. Bernie Schreiber, clean at 2 and a clean. And Mark Manico had a 3, a 1, and a 5. Gabino Renales now riding. Hardest part was probably right around this turn where it was real loose. He had a clean, a 2, and a clean. Back to section number 5 one more time for the third loop. Jordy Terrace had a clean and a 3 his first 2 rides. This section got a lot harder. The dirt down here got a lot looser, making it difficult to find traction to get up this rock wall.
Good try.
Gabino Renales had a 2 and a 1 his first 2 loops. And Larry Michaud, who had a 5 and a 2 his first 2 loops. He's going to get a little help from a friend here. You don't see that too often. Nice technique on the rock wall. Nice ride, he scored a 1. This was a fairly easy section for the top riders. And you saw him here just collected another 5. He fired this the first 2 loops. Diego Bozes, Pascal Couturier, Renato Miglio, Renato Chiaberto. Along with Terry Michaud here. Cleaned this section each time they rode it. Jordy Terrace had a little problem with it. 2 5s and a 1. Steve Saunders, 2 cleans and a 2. Andrew Codina, a 5 and 2 cleans. Gabino Ronales, a 1 and 2 cleans. Shields Bergat, 1 a clean and a 1. Tony Scarlett, a 1 and 2 5s. Bernie Schreiber, 2 a clean and a 5. Ryan Young had a 3 a 5 and a 2. Johnny Anderson, clean and 2 5s. And Mark Manico had a 2 and 2 1s. Hardest part of the section was the big rock right at the entrance. Once you got over that, the rest of this section was fairly easy for the top riders. Theory hops across to another rock here and drives out the exit. As you watch the results of this trials, I'll give you the world standings after this round. Jordy Terrace presently leads with 102. Second, Thierry Michaud with 99. Third, Steve Saunders with 93. Fourth, Diego Bozes with 93. Fifth, Gabino Ronales with 71. Sixth, Pascal Couturier with 57. Seventh, Tony Scarlett with 45. Eighth, Louis Galac with 42. Ninth, Andrew Codina with 42. And 10th, Eddie Lejeune with 38. This was another very well organized and carried out event.